Happy Wednesday, 7th and 8th grade. Today is Wednesday, May 13th, and we are continuing our nutrition study and talking a little bit more about carbohydrates. All right, so you may have heard of something called the glycemic index. Maybe you haven't heard of something called the glycemic index, but the glycemic index is a value or a number that gets assigned to foods based on how slowly or how quickly those foods cause your blood sugar levels or blood glucose levels to rise in your body. Okay, so after we eat anything, we begin to digest it, and all the nutrients that we get from a food are going to be absorbed into our bloodstream, and they're going to have an effect on our body, and they're going to be transported in the blood where they need to go. And one of those things is glucose, our main carbohydrate energy source in the body. And so this is just looking at how quickly does food A versus B versus C make the level of glucose in our blood go up. And they've studied this and they've tested, on lots of people who've ate a specific food, and then they've watched their blood over the course of several hours to watch how quickly it rises or falls in terms of how much glucose is in there. And so foods that are low on the glycemic index tend to release glucose slowly and steadily. So if you eat a low glycemic index food, your blood sugar is going to rise, but at a very slow and steady rate versus jumping off the charts and then dropping immediately. Foods that are high on the glycemic index are going to be the ones that spike your blood sugar really high very quickly within half an hour after eating the food, an hour after eating the food, and an hour or two later your sugars drop again. Okay? And so rapid rises in blood sugar are not usually that healthy, that we wouldn't want that. And so ultimately you want to eat low glycemic index foods. Those are better choices most of the time because they're going to give you a more steady and even amount of glucose in your blood. If you do eat a high glycemic index food and you've spiked your blood sugar, it's going to go up, and you often crash several hours later. And when you crash, you may feel tired, you may feel irritable or kind of grumpy, you may feel even shaky or have a headache. And these are all symptoms of low blood sugar, but mostly because your blood sugar went up really fast and then crashed really fast down. And so, again, this is not usually desirable. This is not something we want. And you may have experienced something like this and not even realized it. I know personally, until I started changing some of the things in my diet, I didn't realize how affected I was from this. But if you're someone who considers yourself like you need to have snacks because you get hangry, if you've heard that term, hungry and angry, you probably experience this and may not even realize that it's the carbohydrates you're eating or how much or when you're eating them, because that hangry feeling is often the result of that blood sugar coming down. And a lot of people experience this in the early afternoon hours, like 2 or 3 o'clock. You kind of get that like, oh, I'm so tired, and maybe have a dull headache or whatever, and then you want a snack, and you're hungry before dinner, and you know the scenario. I used to experience that a lot, but by paying more attention to the glycemic index of foods, we can actually help control that, and it actually makes us feel better all day long. And so this right here is a chart. I just pulled some random foods from a long list from Harvard, actually. These were their numbers, but these are the glycemic indexes of various foods. So skim milk is about 37, boiled potatoes 78, instant mashed potatoes that come from a box is about 87. It's one of the higher glycemic foods in the United States, so I never encourage people to eat instant mashed potatoes because they're very, very high on the glycemic index. An apple is a 36, corn tortilla 46, rice 68, and so on and so forth. I won't go through them. But you can see here, what's interesting is, some of these foods we would probably consider to be healthier than other foods. You might consider brown rice to be a healthy meal option compared to a soft drink or a soda. I mean, most people are going to say that rice would be the healthier choice here. But if you look, soft drinks are right around 60, give or take, 59 plus or minus 3, so right around 60. And brown rice is 68 plus or minus 4, so they're actually pretty close on the glycemic index. So even though one might be considered a little bit healthier, they're both spiking your blood sugar in your body at a similar rate. And so this is something that we can be more aware of to help keep our bodies healthy. Once your body begins to break down carbohydrates, whether that's simple sugars or complex, they ultimately become one thing. They're ultimately going to be digested all the way down back to a monosaccharide like glucose, fructose, or galactose. And so if all foods that contain carbohydrates end up as a monosaccharide, that begs the question, why do we consider some foods unhealthy while other foods healthy? So, for example, we might consider an apple to be more healthy than a sugary barbecue sauce that we would slather on some ribs or something. But an apple has 19 grams of sugar and 2 tablespoons, so about the amount that you would put on maybe a hamburger, contains 15 grams of sugar. So those are pretty similar amounts of sugar, yet you would probably again say that the apple was the healthier choice there versus the barbecue sauce. So similar amounts of sugar, but your body's actually going to process those two foods the same exact way. Yet again, we would still probably say the apple's healthier, but if you were to study your blood sugar after that, they're going to have similar effects on your blood sugar, and they both, sugar is sugar. So we also have to take into account the nutrients that are present in food. So that's why you wouldn't be wrong if you said the apple is still healthier. It is, because there's other nutrients in the apple that your body is going to get that you're not going to get from the barbecue sauce. But when we're just talking about sugars and carbs, both of those are very similar, and they're both going to spike your blood sugar and contribute to issues that can come along with that. So it can be very deceiving just how much sugar is in a food. We can't really always see sugar. I mean, the only example I can really think of with that is, if you're like a coffee drinker, or mom and dad's a coffee drinker, and they put 1 sugar packet or 2 in their coffee in the morning, or a spoonful or 2. You can see the amount of sugar they're putting in to the coffee. But for most foods, carbs, breads, pastries, muffins, cookies, drinks, like from Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts, whatever, you don't actually see the sugar. And so you might be surprised to see how many tablespoons of sugar are in some of your favorite foods, snacks, fruits even, and beverages. And so on Friday, I'm going to be doing a video demonstration to kind of show you just how much sugar is actually in some of the things that you probably have ate or eat on the regular. All right, and so your only homework tonight is, there's a great video understanding, going over the understanding of carbohydrates on YouTube that was really thorough, and it covered a little bit of the glycemic index. So please, 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 please watch that, because that's going to kind of really solidify your understanding of carbohydrates at this point before we move on next week to proteins and fat. So that is your only homework. There's nothing you need to email me, but please just watch that video. It's about 5 minutes, and it's linked directly below in the information below this video. And with that, that's all I have for you until our sugar demonstration on Friday.